Background of Robert Pickton. Early life and background. Robert William Pickton, born on October 24, 1949, in Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, grew up on a family-owned pig farm. The Pickton family was known for their reclusive and somewhat disheveled lifestyle. Robert, known as Willie, was the middle child of 3 siblings. Pickton dropped out of school at a young age and took over the family farm after his parents passed away. The farm became increasingly unkempt, and Robert, along with his brother David, started a salvage business called the Piggy Palace Good Times Society, which was ostensibly a non-profit charity but often hosted raucous parties with heavy drinking and drug use. The pig farm and lifestyle. The Pickton farm was notorious in the local community. It was a sprawling, dirty property where Robert continued to raise pigs and engage in odd jobs. The farm was frequented by sex workers and individuals from Vancouver's downtown east side, a neighborhood known for its high rates of poverty, addiction, and homelessness. Robert was known as a quiet, socially awkward man who often gave money and gifts to sex workers. Many of these women were vulnerable, with struggles involving addiction and homelessness, making them easy targets for Pickton's predatory behavior. Initial suspicions and complaints. Over the years, there were several complaints and suspicions regarding activities on the Pickton farm. Neighbors reported strange noises, and the police received tips about missing women potentially being connected to the farm. However, these early warnings were not thoroughly investigated due to a lack of evidence and the marginalized status of the victims. The murders and modus operandi. Pattern of disappearances. Between the late 1980s and early 2000s, dozens of women from Vancouver's downtown east side began to disappear. Many of these women were sex workers and had histories of drug addiction, making them less likely to be immediately missed by the broader society. Pickton's modus operandi involved luring women to his farm with promises of money or drugs. Once at the farm, he would sexually assault, murder, and dispose of their bodies. Evidence later revealed that he often butchered the bodies, using his knowledge of slaughtering from pig farming. Methods of disposal. Pickton disposed of the bodies in various ways, including feeding remains to his pigs, rendering body parts, and mixing remains with pork products that were potentially distributed to the public. The methods he used made it extremely difficult for authorities to find conclusive evidence linking him directly to the murders, as traditional forensic evidence was often destroyed or contaminated by the nature of the disposal process. Initial arrest and release. In 1997, Pickton was charged with attempted murder after a woman escaped from his farm, covered in blood and with injuries inflicted by a knife. She had fought back and managed to flee to safety, resulting in Pickton's arrest. However, the charges were later dropped due to inconsistencies in the victim's statements, who was a sex worker and considered an unreliable witness. This incident was a significant missed opportunity that allowed Pickton to continue his killing spree for several more years, during which the disappearances escalated. Investigation and arrest. The investigation breakthrough. By the early 2000s, the Vancouver Police Department, under increasing public pressure, launched a more intensive investigation into the missing women from the downtown east side. This included a task force and a reward for information leading to arrests. In 2002, a search warrant was issued for the Pickton farm related to illegal firearms, and during this search, police found personal items belonging to missing women. This discovery led to a deeper investigation of the farm. Arrest and discovery of evidence. Robert Pickton was arrested on February 5, 2002, initially on weapons charges. However, as the investigation continued, more gruesome evidence was uncovered on the farm, including human remains, DNA of missing women, and personal belongings. The forensic search of the farm was one of the most extensive in Canadian history, lasting over 2 years and involving the painstaking recovery of evidence amid the squalor and contamination of the site. The police found DNA from at least 33 women, although Pickton claimed to have killed as many as 49. Confession and statements. During his time in custody, Pickton made several incriminating statements, including a boast to an undercover officer posing as a cellmate that he had killed 49 women and regretted not making it an even 50. These confessions, along with physical evidence, formed the basis of the case against him. Trial and conviction. The trial. Robert Pickton's trial began in January 2007 and was one of Canada's most high-profile and costly criminal trials. He was charged with 27 counts of first-degree murder, but the trial was initially limited to 6 counts due to the complexity and volume of evidence. The prosecution presented a harrowing case that included forensic evidence, witness testimonies, and Pickton's own statements. The defense argued that the evidence was circumstantial and suggested that Pickton was not solely responsible for the murders. Conviction and sentencing. On December 9, 2007, Pickton was convicted of 6 counts of second-degree murder, each carrying a life sentence with no possibility of parole for 25 years. The verdict of second-degree murder, rather than first-degree, was controversial and led to public outrage, as it was perceived as a lesser charge for the gravity of his crimes. The remaining 20 charges were stayed in 2010 after the prosecution decided that further trials would not add to Pickton's sentence, given that he was already serving the maximum possible under Canadian law. Public and legal reactions. The case exposed significant flaws in how the police handled missing persons cases, especially involving marginalized individuals. There were widespread criticisms of the Vancouver Police and the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, RCMP, for their delayed response and perceived negligence in the early stages of the investigation. The trial also brought to light issues of systemic discrimination against vulnerable women, leading to calls for reforms in how such cases are investigated and how victims are treated within the justice system. Aftermath and legacy. Impact on victims' families. The families of the victims endured years of uncertainty and pain, compounded by the slow progress of the investigation and the harrowing details that emerged during the trial. Many family members felt justice was not fully served, particularly given the decision not to proceed with additional murder charges. In response to the case, families and activists have continued to push for greater accountability and systemic changes to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. Inquiry and recommendations. In the wake of the Pickton case, a public inquiry was launched in 2010 to investigate the failures of the police and government agencies in responding to the disappearances of women from Vancouver's downtown east side. The inquiry released a report in 2012, making 63 recommendations aimed at improving police investigations, increasing support for vulnerable women, and addressing systemic issues within the justice system. Key recommendations included the creation of a regional police force to improve coordination, better training for police on handling cases involving vulnerable populations, and more robust support services for women in high-risk environments. Robert Pickton's life in prison. Pickton remains incarcerated and is unlikely ever to be released due to the severity of his crimes and his dangerous offender status. He continues to be a notorious figure in Canadian criminal history. Since his conviction, Pickton has made various unsuccessful attempts to appeal his sentence, and he has occasionally resurfaced in the news, such as when he published a controversial book that was subsequently removed from sale. Legacy and cultural impact. The Robert Pickton case has had a profound impact on Canadian society, raising awareness of the vulnerability of marginalized women, especially Indigenous women, who are disproportionately represented among the missing and murdered. It has also spurred ongoing dialogue about the need for justice system reform and the importance of addressing the root causes of violence against women, such as poverty, addiction, and systemic discrimination. Conclusion. The story of Robert Pickton is not just a tale of a single serial killer but a reflection of broader societal issues. The failures of law enforcement, the vulnerability of marginalized women, and the public's demand for accountability all play a part in the lasting legacy of the pig farm murders.